Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, a heartwarming and beautifully written novel that blends romance, grief, hope, and a touch of magic. With its lovable characters, emotional depth, and an unforgettable premise, this story explores how life can surprise us when we least expect it. Let's get into the story. The story begins with Clementine West. Clementine worked at a book publishing house in New York. A few months earlier, her beloved Aunt Analia had passed away, and the loss had left a hole in her heart. She missed her terribly. To cope with the grief, Clementine buried herself in work, staying late at the office almost every night. After Analia's death, Clementine inherited her aunt's Upper East Side apartment. But she hated going there. The apartment was filled with memories of Analia, and every room reminded her of what she had lost. Instead of returning home, she often chose to work overtime just to avoid facing the emptiness waiting for her. Analia had been a fun-loving woman who adored traveling. Before her death, she and Clementine had taken many trips together, exploring new places and collecting unforgettable memories. Analia had lived her life to the fullest, always chasing adventure and joy. One day, Clementine's boss called her into his office. She had good news. Not only was she being offered a promotion, but her vacation request from several months earlier had also been approved. Every year, Clementine used that vacation time to travel with her aunt. But this year was different. There was no trip to plan and no aunt to accompany her. Instead of feeling excited, Clementine felt a fresh wave of sadness. She declined the vacation and returned to her desk. Her friends gathered around to congratulate her on the promotion, but she couldn't bring herself to celebrate. The grief was still too heavy. That night, after work, Clementine unlocked the door to her apartment. The moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong. The apartment looked different. It smelled different. Confused, she slowly walked farther inside. Her eyes widened as she noticed Aunt Analia's old chair sitting in the living room. The shelves were filled with old books that had been thrown away 2 years earlier. The wallpaper was the old design she remembered from years ago. Even one of her own paintings was hanging on the wall. Clementine loved painting, and she clearly remembered replacing that painting long ago. Her heart began to race. Then she walked into the kitchen. There, standing by the stove and cooking dinner, was a handsome young man. Clementine froze in shock. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What are you doing here? How did you get into this apartment?" Fear crept into her voice. The young man looked equally confused. He introduced himself as James Iwan Ashton, though everyone called him Iwan. Iwan explained that he had recently come to the city looking for a job. His mother was a close friend of Aunt Analia, and Analia herself had invited him to stay in the apartment. "She's traveling with her niece right now," he said casually. "She told me I could stay here until I get settled." Clementine stared at him. Nothing he was saying made sense. Her aunt had died months ago. How could Analia have called him? How could she have invited him to stay? Panicking, Clementine grabbed her phone and checked the date. Her breath caught in her throat. The date on the screen showed a day from 7 years earlier. Somehow, impossibly, Clementine had slipped 7 years into the past. Suddenly, she remembered all the stories her aunt used to tell about the apartment. Analia often claimed that the apartment sometimes slipped through time. She always called it her magical apartment. Whenever she heard those stories, Clementine had laughed and assumed her aunt was spinning another one of her imaginative fantasies. But standing there now, staring at a man who believed Analia was still alive, Clementine realized something astonishing. Her aunt had been telling the truth all along. The apartment slipped 7 years into the past. In this version of the world, Aunt Analia was still alive. She was traveling somewhere, just as she often did. Clementine rushed out of the apartment, hoping to find some explanation, but nothing outside had changed. Everything looked normal. When she returned, she realized this wasn't her apartment at all. It was her aunt's old apartment. Inside, Iwan was cooking dinner. He looked surprised to see her. "I wasn't expecting anyone," he said. "Your aunt told me this apartment would be empty." Clementine quickly explained that she sometimes stayed there while her aunt was away traveling. She told him he could stay there with her. Soon, Iwan finished cooking dinner, and the food was incredible. During the meal, he told her that he had come to the city to become a chef. They spent the evening talking before finally going to sleep. The next morning, Clementine woke up to find a note on the kitchen counter. Iwan had already left for a day of job hunting, but before leaving, he had prepared breakfast for her. Clementine wanted to leave the apartment. At the same time, she desperately wanted to stay long enough for Aunt Analia to return. She wanted to see her aunt again. She wanted to tell her how much she missed her. So she stayed. That evening, Iwan returned, and once again they shared dinner and conversation. He told her that his grandfather had taught him how to cook. His dream was to open a restaurant someday, not a fancy restaurant. He wanted a place where people could relax, talk with their friends, laugh, and enjoy themselves. In return, Clementine told him about her own life. She worked at a publishing house and loved painting. They talked for hours. For the first time since her aunt's death, Clementine felt genuinely happy. She found herself becoming attracted to him. Iwan even gave her a nickname, Lemon. The following day, Iwan went out job hunting again while Clementine headed to her office. At the publishing house, a famous chef wanted to publish a cookbook. Clementine's boss was eager to secure the project, and today was her first meeting with the chef. The moment she saw him, she froze. He looked familiar. It was Iwan, only older. When he introduced himself, however, he used a different name, James, not Iwan, and he acted as if he had never met her before. This older Iwan was now a famous chef. He had recently opened a new restaurant and was preparing to publish his first cookbook. He looked more mature, more polished, and somehow more tired. When they discussed the book, he spoke to her coldly and professionally. The warm, caring Iwan she had met in the apartment seemed completely gone. After the meeting, Clementine returned home. But this time, she stepped into her present-day apartment. The apartment where her aunt was dead. No time slip. She couldn't stop thinking about Iwan. Did he remember her after 7 years? And if he did, why had he become so distant and rude? Days passed. Every time she entered the apartment, she remained in the present. Nothing happened. Then one evening, she opened the door and immediately smelled food cooking. Her heart skipped a beat. The apartment had sent her back 7 years again. Inside, Iwan was making dinner. "What happened to you?" he asked. "Where have you been all these days?" Clementine told him she had been staying with a friend. As they ate together, Iwan talked about his job search and his family. Clementine shared stories about her work. The more time she spent with him, the more she saw the real Iwan. He was funny and sweet. He cared about people. He made her feel as though she belonged, as though she was loved. Slowly, she fell for him. Then at night, caught up in the emotion of the moment, Iwan kissed her. Clementine kissed him back. Their relationship became deeper and more intimate, and during that time, Clementine forgot about the cold and distant chef in the present. She was completely in love with the Iwan from 7 years ago. Then she remembered something Aunt Analia had always told her. Don't fall in love in this apartment. Finally, Clementine understood why. The man she loved existed in the past, 7 years earlier. But in the present, he was James, a completely different person. Not long afterward, present-day James sent her an invitation to the grand opening of his new restaurant. Clementine decided to go. When she arrived, she was shocked. The restaurant was everything young Iwan had said he never wanted. It was elegant and fancy. The menu was filled with cuisines that younger Iwan had never talked about serving. Loud music blasted through the dining room, making conversation difficult. People couldn't sit quietly and talk with their friends the way he had once dreamed. It was the exact opposite of the restaurant he had described back in the apartment. Standing there, Clementine couldn't understand what had happened. How had the sweet young man she knew become this person? As Clementine was heading home after the restaurant opening, James caught up with her. He invited her to visit a friend's food truck. At first, she didn't want to go, but she agreed. The moment she arrived, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. The old Iwan, the kind, funny, easygoing version of him. He laughed with his friends, joked around, and seemed genuinely happy. For a brief moment, he reminded her of the young man from her aunt's apartment. When introducing her to his friends, he simply said, "This is Clementine. Not Lemon, just Clementine." The nickname was gone. That hurt more than she expected. Standing there, watching him laugh with his friends, Clementine became convinced that he had forgotten her completely. To him, she wasn't the girl from the apartment 7 years ago. She wasn't Lemon. She was just another business acquaintance. That night, she returned home desperate to see the younger Iwan again. She wanted the apartment to slip back into the past. She wanted to tell him not to forget her. She missed him so much that it physically hurt. But the apartment stayed in the present. Days passed. Then one evening, the apartment finally slipped again. When Clementine opened the door, she found younger Iwan waiting for her. The sight of him filled her with relief. Iwan excitedly told her that he had finally found a job. He was working as a dishwasher in a restaurant. But despite the good news, he didn't seem truly happy. His hands were rough and red from hours of washing dishes. Clementine wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to tell him about the future, about the famous chef he would become, about the successful restaurants he would own. But she couldn't. How could she possibly explain any of it? So she stayed silent. Instead, she encouraged him. She told him to keep working hard and to keep chasing his dream of becoming a chef. Part of her desperately wanted to ask him to remember her, to promise that he would never forget Lemon. But she couldn't bring herself to say it. It felt too desperate. That night, they spent the evening together, holding on to every moment they could. Later, Iwan told her something important. He had finally found a place of his own. The next day, he would be moving out. He smiled and told her he wanted to spend his last day with her. He wanted them to walk through the city together like a real couple. He wanted to hold her hand in public and spend an ordinary day together. But Clementine knew it couldn't happen. The next morning, Iwan opened the apartment door and stepped outside. Clementine couldn't follow him. She was terrified. She knew that if she crossed that doorway, the apartment would return her to the present, and Iwan would disappear. She stood there, frozen between two worlds. Eventually, she gathered every ounce of courage she had and stepped outside. But when she did, Iwan was gone. The street was empty. There was no sign of him anywhere. Panicked, she rushed back into the apartment, but it had already slipped back to the present. The chance was gone. Days turned into weeks. Every time she opened the apartment door, she hoped to see the past again. Every time, she was disappointed. She missed younger Iwan terribly. Meanwhile, present-day James continued treating her as if they had never met before. They kept seeing each other because of the cookbook project, but every interaction felt professional and distant. Then one day, Iwan invited her back to his friend's food truck. As they sat together eating, Clementine once again caught glimpses of the younger Iwan she loved. The warmth was there. The humor was there. For a moment, she could almost believe he was the same person. Trying to understand what had happened to him, she brought up his restaurant. She reminded him of the kind of place he used to dream about. A cozy restaurant where people could relax, talk with friends, and enjoy themselves. But James simply shrugged. "People like modern restaurants these days," he said. The words broke her heart. The young man she loved had dreamed of something completely different. How had he changed so much? Then one of Iwan's friends suddenly laughed. "You know," he said, "during our internship, Iwan was always talking about a girl he loved." Iwan immediately tried to stop him, but it was too late. His friend continued. "He talked about her all the time." Clementine's heart started pounding. The friend grinned. Her name was Lemon. For a moment, the entire world seemed to stop, and Clementine realized the truth. Iwan had never forgotten her. Clementine froze. Her heart stopped for a moment. He remembered. All this time, he had remembered. But if that was true, then why had he acted like a stranger? Why had he never told her? Finally, Iwan decided to tell her everything. He admitted that he had always remembered her. He had always loved her. 7 years earlier, when he asked her to spend the day with him in the city, she never came. She simply disappeared. One moment she was there, and the next she was gone. He had no idea what had happened. For days, he tried calling the apartment, hoping to find her. Eventually, Aunt Analia answered the phone. That was when she told him the truth. She told him about the apartment's magic. She explained that Clementine wasn't from his time. She was from 7 years in the future. At first, Iwan couldn't believe it. But after everything he had experienced in that apartment, he had no choice. He spent years hoping he would see Clementine again. Sometimes he even tried to find her in the present. But whenever he crossed paths with her in the past, she didn't know who he was yet. For her, those meetings hadn't happened. For him, they had already become precious memories. Then came the day she walked into his office for the cookbook meeting. The moment he saw her, he was shocked. After 7 years, there she was, the woman he had never forgotten, the woman he still loved. But Clementine introduced herself as if they had never met, as if he were a complete stranger. Iwan realized immediately that she hadn't experienced the apartment yet. Her journey hadn't begun, so he kept his secret. It hurt, but he stayed silent. Then she attended the opening of his restaurant. He noticed how uncomfortable she was. She looked disappointed and confused, almost heartbroken. And suddenly he understood. Clementine had met the younger version of him. The apartment had finally brought her into his past. That was why she looked at him the way she did. That was why she kept asking questions about the restaurant he once dreamed of opening. That was why she seemed saddened by the man he had become. From that moment on, Iwan became patient. He didn't tell her the truth. He waited and invited her to spend time with him. He took her to his friend's food truck. He gave her chances to see pieces of the old Iwan that still existed beneath the successful chef everyone else knew. Most importantly, he waited for her journey through the apartment to catch up with his own. And now, hearing his friend accidentally reveal the nickname Lemon, he knew it finally had. The timeline had caught up. The secret was no longer a secret. Tears filled Clementine's eyes. All this time she had believed that he had forgotten her, but he had remembered every moment, every conversation, every dinner, every kiss, and he had spent 7 years carrying those memories. Finally, Clementine confessed everything. She told him she loved him, not just the younger Iwan. Not just the version she met in the apartment. She loved him, the man standing in front of her, the man who had waited 7 years, the man who had never forgotten. Iwan confessed that he loved her too. He always had. At last, there were no more secrets between them. No more years separating them. Only the two of them, together. Later, they returned to the apartment that had changed both of their lives. The apartment that had connected two people across 7 years. Clementine stepped inside and waited. Part of her expected the familiar sensation. Part of her expected the apartment to slip through time once again, but it didn't. Nothing happened. The apartment remained exactly where it was. For the first time, Clementine understood. This was why Aunt Analia had always called it a magical apartment, and this was why she had always warned her. Don't fall in love in this apartment. Her aunt had known. She had known about Iwan. She had known about the impossible love story that the apartment would create. Standing there, Clementine finally accepted something she had been avoiding since the beginning. No matter how many times the apartment slipped through time, Aunt Analia was not coming back. The apartment could show her the past. It could not change reality. Her aunt was gone. And for the first time, Clementine made peace with that truth. She stopped waiting for another slip. Instead, she looked toward the future, toward Iwan. The magical apartment had given her many things. It had given her answers. It had given her closure. And most unexpectedly of all, it had given her love. This time, when Clementine smiled, it wasn't because she was hoping to return to the past. It was because she was finally ready to move forward. If you enjoyed this book summary, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another book summary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.